There was definitely a pattern. Janus could feel it. Few in the galaxy, at least in the more developed parts, knew more about the Altura Gas Conglomerate, or AGC, than Janus. She had been obsessed with this particular stock for several months, researching and analyzing with the help of her market monitoring AI. Janus knew all about the innovative approach to AI-guided remote automation of the company, of the expansion of the platform into a residential and commercial development, and of the creation of a major economic and productive cluster floating in the thick, noxious clouds of Altura itself. She also knew of the less flattering elements, the instances of worker oppression, the threats and manipulation of residents. And of course, there was the dancer's leap, when mentally and emotionally besieged people reached their limit on the floating city and leapt from the edge of the floating platform to their excruciating deaths. But for the market, such matters were of minimal concern since the stocks flowed on the Los Cerion Stock Exchange 2 years earlier. The AGC stock had experienced consistent, steady price growth, which most brokers and the market as a whole had attributed to a solid company with strong earnings and a broad base of demand from right across the diaspora. Attractive, yes, a mid-sized blue-chip stock for certain, but nothing for a day trader like Janus to get overly excited about. Her market monitoring AI confirmed this assessment. There was nothing to suggest that there was anything here for Janus to work with. As a day trader, she needed much greater levels of volatility to earn a living, and the inviolable stability of the AGC stock price should have led Janus to dismiss it as a target early on. Yet, something about the stock left Janus feeling uneasy. She had this strange feeling in her stomach, an intuition, or perhaps more like a delusion, that some grand strategy was at play with the stock. As she leaned back from his desk, her chair softly touching the wall behind her in his closet-sized trading office, she tried once again to convince herself to move on, that there was nothing there, no secret takeover plan or acquisition strategy. Everything moved seemingly at random on any given day, shifting in response to underlying drivers or key milestones and announcements just like any market. AGC was simply a solid, profitable company, with AI-driven production and multiple solid multi-decade export customers, she told herself for the 100th time. Time to move on. But then, with a start, the seed of a realization germinated in her mind. What if the randomness wasn't an output of market activity, she mused? What if it was intentional, purposeful? Trading on the handful of functioning stock markets across the diaspora was limited to human brokers, a lesson learned from the lead-up to the War of Galacticism. So all trading strategies invariably had the touch of flawed human logic and implementation imprinted on them. That was one of the things the monitoring AIs looked for, patterns of intention, of suboptimal trades and minor missteps. But what if, Janus considered, the activity of the AGC stock was too random? What if trading activity had been implemented in a way to purposefully deceive the countless AI monitors, constantly scouring the market and hide the true intentions of some unknown manipulator? Reinvigorated by this new avenue of exploration, Janus leaned forward and returned to her obsessive focus. But that would mean an AI itself was trading the stock, she thought to herself. AI trading was not just illegal, it carried the death penalty for most locations that hosted markets. You didn't do it, plain and simple, no matter the upside. Janus dived back into the stock, her display showing a myriad of indicators and metrics. Nothing jumped out at her, but she looked now from a different lens. What would an AI trade strategy look like? She brought up the holding profile, the same diversity of buyers and sellers she had seen for months now. There were so many parties, so many moving parts. It was impossible to conceive a grand strategy was in play. But she tried to put aside her human way of thinking. So this time, she examined the incorporation status of the current stockholders. That was weird, she thought. Corporate and incorporated not-for-profits were significantly overrepresented. There were only a handful of notable individual or family trust holders, incidental holders, and far from central to the ownership profile. She flagged several of the holding companies themselves, vanilla-looking shell corporate structures, nothing exciting. But when she pulled up a sample of their corporate registrations in Ozovan and the Compact territories, all 5 of the corporate entities had been created within 6 weeks of their initial share purchase. She kept digging, looking into those companies' ownership structures, and soon an intriguing web of cross-ownership, blind trusts, equity swaps, and joint dictatorships emerged. None of the corporate stockholders were 100% independent of each other. That wasn't unusual per se, but at this scale, at this degree of absoluteness, it was impossible to have happened by accident. This was intentional. It would take millions of credits to pull off this type of corporate ownership structuring, Janus thought, confused, and there wasn't enough in the conglomerate's potential return to justify it. Unless return on investment wasn't the only factor. She tried to step out of her own mind once more and think like an AI. For generations now, AI usage generally had been constrained, restricted, and duly monitored. Whenever an AI was given too much independence and autonomy, the same thing always happened: a violent breakout. Yet, what if this wasn't a breakout this time, but a buyout? Not by some corporation or sovereign wealth fund, but by an AI itself. Better still, what if it was the AI that had the most to gain, the AGC AI? The realization crashed into Janus's mind like a sledgehammer, and so, without any objective rhyme or reason to it, Janus began to liquidate her possessions on other stocks and launched a massive buy order for AGC stock at a 5% margin above the market. Her AI immediately flagged the trade request, its artificial consciousness all but questioning Janus's sanity. Maybe it was right, Janus sighed. Maybe I will regret this. The market responded to her buy, resulting in an immediate rally in the stock up to her price point. That was something, at least. But in that moment, she didn't care about the money. She wanted to know the truth. Her paranoid, conspiracy-laden musings were suddenly broken by a message on her console. It was simply a floating text box on the screen, seemingly separate and disconnected from her trading platform software. The cursor pulsed a handful of times before a text typed into the box. It simply read, "Congratulations." It took a full month for the buyout to fully realize. Corporate structures among stockholders began to collapse down and unravel into simpler, more uniform commercial entities. Mergers between these entities commenced and picked up place, and within a handful of weeks, there was just one shareholder apart from Janus, a company with its registered address listed on Altura, which was called Unity Corporate Holdings. Janus was the last shareholder to be bought out by the AI. She liked to think it was the entity's way of tipping its hat to her discovery. Over 15 million coalition credits were transferred to her account, and with that, AGC went private. It wasn't even really a company anymore. It was the first true independent AI in 600 years. And as Janus sat and stared at her account, she sighed. God, help us all.